There are a lot of 50mm lenses on the market, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot. A 50mm lens is probably one of the most readily available lenses out there. Everybody and their grandmothers has owned a 50mm lens at some point or another. I think I've had about 5 different ones myself. But weirdly, I tend to gravitate away from using a 50mm lens. I much prefer a 35 or an 85mm focal length. But there is something special and flattering about shooting with a 50mm lens that I can totally understand why so many of you guys swear by this focal length. And Sigma have added another 50mm lens to an already vast market, but what makes this one special? Well, I'd say it's the aperture. See, this 50mm lens stops all the way down to f1.2, and spoiler alert, Sigma absolutely crushed it with this one, and in today's video I'm going to tell you how and why. So let's first have a look at the size and design of this lens, and I'll be honest, I was anticipating this lens would be rather heavy and bulky because of that stunning f1.2 aperture, but it's actually the smallest and lightest 50mm f1.2 lens available for the Sony E-mount, and not just for the E-mount, this thing is smaller than Nikon and Canon's. Coming in at 745 grams, it's around 30 grams or so lighter than the Sony G Master 50mm f1.2, and it's slightly smaller in design too, which is kind of impressive because not many people thought a lens offering all this could get much smaller, but then Sigma said to Sony, hold my beer. However, despite being the lightest 50mm f1.2 on the market, I don't think we can give it the decorated nifty 50 status because it's still quite a chunky lens and quite heavy too. But for what it's packing, I don't think the weight is that bad. You'll have no problems carrying it about or shooting with it all day. The lens itself is very well built, it feels solid and great in the hand. The focus ring has a superb feel to it, having a perfect balance of resistance. On the lens you also have a standard AF to MF switch, a physical aperture control ring with a switch to make it declickable, and finally you have one custom button that you can assign how you please in Sony's menu systems for both photo and video. The lens's robust construction is also dust and splash resistant, so you can use it in the elements without a problem. I've been using it in the UK, up north, where it rains constantly, all the time, and you know what, if it can survive the north of England, it can survive anywhere, and that's probably going to be my new motto going forward. So all of that is the standard goodness that we are so accustomed to seeing from Sigma. The build quality is super high quality, but in the pursuit of making the smallest 50mm f1.2 lens on the market, has Sigma compromised slightly on other important elements such as the autofocus and the image quality. Starting with the autofocus first, I've been primarily using this lens in conjunction with my Sony a7 IV, and when it comes to autofocus, I've not been let down for both photo or video. And that's mainly because this lens is equipped with floating focus and a HLA motor which delivers extremely fast and accurate autofocus. This system also assists in minimizing focus breathing, which is something the Sony 50mm f1.2 struggle with handling a lot, so it's impressive to see a smaller 50mm f1.2 that is also cheaper handle this a lot better than a 50mm G Master. Now typically when you are shooting at a wide open aperture, especially at f1.2, this is when you can start to see a lens struggling with autofocus because the margins are so narrow to get focus spot on. Some lenses end up focusing on an ear, on an eyebrow, on an eyelash, on the nose, rather than the actual eye. And whilst I didn't shoot any portrait photography with this lens, mainly because I don't actually know any models, from my real world testing I noticed that the autofocus, even at f1.2, was sticky. I don't know if sticky is a good descriptive word for autofocus, but it locks on and tracks in conjunction with Sony's autofocus system like a king, delivering sharp results like it was nothing. The same also goes for video autofocus when the aperture is at its widest. I conducted some awkward looking tests where I walked towards and away from the camera, and this established that the autofocus on this camera was very consistent and the autofocus for video was spot on. Just before we get onto the image quality, a quick word here from today's sponsor. Tessan is a leading brand in creating universal travel adapters. As someone who travels quite a bit myself, it can be a right pain having multiple different plugs from multiple different countries, and the price can soon rack up too, especially if you need them to be fast charging like I do as a content creator. And that's where this genius travel plug from Tessan comes into play to solve that problem. This travel plug has 3 different adapters. On this particular plug I've got Type G, Type A and Type C adapters, making it compatible in over 200 countries. in one plug. On top of that, it has one universal AC outlet and 4 USB ports, including 2 USB-A ports and 2 USB-C ports. Meaning with this travel adapter, I can charge 5 different devices simultaneously with 65 watts of fast charging. All this power in a lightweight, compact package that is going to save you space in your suitcase or backpack. I guarantee when I go traveling next, this is going to be in my camera bag. And if you're planning on doing any traveling in the near future, then I'd highly recommend you picking one of these plugs up for yourself, and I'll leave a link for it in the description below. Thanks Tessan for the sponsor. Now back on to today's video. Throughout this video, you've probably seen the odd photo here and there taken with this lens, and you're probably just as impressed as I am when it comes to the image quality. The sharpness and just overall optical quality of this lens is outstanding. A common trade-off with having a super shallower aperture is a softer image, but I am delighted to confirm that there is none of that here with this lens. Not even the corners are sacrificed. This is sharp edge to edge. And of course, this lens creates extremely creamy shallow depth of field that just delivers beautiful looking results, and of course that means this lens is top tier in low light situations and creates beautiful balls of the bokeh variety. Look at them balls. Nice. Now, of course, me being me, I have done some street photography with this lens, and with this being a 50mm lens, it's a classic choice. It's right at home on the streets. Just like The Godfather is a classic film, a 50mm lens is a classic choice for the street. And you know what? I bet The Godfather even owned a 50mm lens at some point. And here on the streets, I was able to put this lens to the test in a more real-world scenario, and the look you get from this lens is so naturalistic. A big reason for that, of course, is that a 50mm lens has a natural field of view, which in turn mimics and is the closest to what we see with the naked eye. In addition, a 50mm lens is so versatile and good for a mixture of shooting scenarios, including portrait, streets, cars, landscapes, just to name a few. When it comes to chromatic aberration, this lens is mostly well controlled. There is a small amount, but nothing to worry about, and it's something that is easily fixable when they introduce a lens profile for it in Adobe Lightroom. The same also goes to distortion. The lens controls most of that perfectly. The only area you may notice a slight amount of distortion is in the corners, but again, once the lens profile is introduced onto Adobe Lightroom, I'm sure that'll be cleaned up in a jiffy. So if you're looking at picking up this bundle of joy for yourself, it is going to cost you around £1,299 British pounds, and I can hear from here a few British lads scoffing on their tea, saying that is not cheap for a 50mm lens. But it is an f1.2 lens with pro premium qualities, and its only competition right now is the G Master 50mm F1.2, and that thing is £2,099. Taking that into consideration for the build quality and the outstanding image quality, you'd have to say that that is good value for money. But the only question remains is, do you actually need a 50mm lens at f1.2? Personally, I'd say no, which is probably going to surprise a lot of people because I love shooting with shallow aperture numbers, but for what I shoot, I don't think I would ever need an f1.2 aperture, and I think in many scenarios, it's too shallow. If you can live without an f1.2 aperture, you'd be probably better off with Sigma's 50mm f1.4, which is around £600 cheaper. But I reckon for portrait photographers or wedding photographers, having that little bit of extra aperture, that flexibility, could go a long way. So if you're looking for a fast, sharp lens that has incredible bokeh, a versatile focal length with tremendous autofocus and outstanding image quality, whilst being significantly cheaper than its nearest competitor, then the Sigma 50mm f1.2 might just be for you. So what are your thoughts on this lens? Let me know in the comment section below. Now, if you would like to see the full POV I shot with this lens, then definitely check out this top video right here. Or if you'd like to see a video with a cheaper 50mm lens, then definitely check out this bottom video right here. But with all that said, until next time, create, explore, and inspire.